Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Gooners podcast. We have got a special guest today, Max from the Cottage Talk. Hi, Max. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be on and talk all things Arsenal Fulham.
Yeah, it's like an interesting one for me because a lot of Arsenal connections to Fulham. Always, right now Leno used to be one of my favorite goalkeepers. And when he was playing for Arsenal, I always wanted him to be representing Germany and stuff. So I still follow him a little bit, even though a lot of my friends don't like me saying that out loud. But yeah, it's what it is. Before we get started on the episode, for all the followers, please do go and check out Cottage Talk. They've been doing great work. I did check out your video of the Brentford game, which we will talk about shortly. But for all the viewers, please do like, share, subscribe, and comment in your thoughts on it, and also check out Max's channel. Support. It's all about fan support. That's what we are here for. So thanks for coming in. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, so I think let's get started. First thing I wanted to know about Fulham is Marco Silva has been one of the brightest coaches in Premier League for quite some time. But when he has moved now, and the start of the season and everything doesn't look like everything is as he expects to be, at least for someone from outside. I know it's a heavy question to start off with, but that's the question that I have been having for quite some time, especially seeing the start of the season, right? It feels like he is not given, or he's not having the control of the club. Is that how you guys see it?
No, I think that's totally accurate. After last season, we finished 10th. It was a huge overperformance.
Yeah.
And we expected, okay, let's strengthen on that. Let's
Yeah.
become a better side. Maybe we challenge for Europe, 8th, 7th.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, you could argue the squad's gotten weaker. And you've seen Silva really publicly complain about the reality of the team we have. And I think most Fulham fans would agree that we're not really in a good moment right now in terms of the transfers and in terms of the squad, just depth. I mean, we're just a pretty thin team. Of course, we're going to talk about the big one, losing Mitrovic, but we haven't really replaced in some other areas. And yeah, Silva definitely, I think, expected to be in a better situation. And there's always this kind of simmering dissatisfaction with the club ownership. Shahid Khan is the owner, and he's been very generous with giving funds to the club. But, you have Tony Khan, who's his son. He's the director of football, a very controversial figure. And I think Marco Silva and him don't always see eye to eye. So Silva, of course, any manager wants complete control over transfers. He's saying to the club, I don't think you've given me the tools to succeed the way I want to succeed, because he's very ambitious, as you mentioned. So yeah, a little bit of tension. It's not been the best summer, you could say, for Fulham.
But talking about summer though, right? I'll start with the obvious big one, which is Mitrovic going away. And it seems like, on a footballing world perspective, right? It seems like the Saudi league is becoming this kind of tempting one for all the players to go to. Obviously, we could talk as fans, we could say, oh, it should be passion, it should be that, it should be this and everything. But at the end of the day, if someone's giving that much money, why not players choose it? And I don't blame Mitrovic for it, but it still feels, I know how it feels. As an Arsenal fan, I know how it feels. To lose one of your best players to money. So tell me about this whole Mitrovic situation, because it didn't come out till the last moment of the last game. There was still a lot of talks about it. There were the whole thing about it. So what happened there?
Totally bizarre situation. I mean, to back up a little bit, Mitrovic had been with Fulham since 2018. So 5 years.
Yeah.
And there have been many situations when we've been relegated from the Premier League and had terrible seasons. And I thought, okay, that makes sense. Maybe Mitro will go to a European club, play European football, Champions League, Europa League, whatever.
Mhm.
He never did that. Even at the lowest points of Fulham, when we were terrible in the Premier League or in the Championship, he stuck with us. So for me as a fan, it's frustrating, and of course it makes sense because it's money, but it's such a weird thing to say that he left Fulham after our best season in a decade.
Yeah.
We finished 10th in the league. He scored 14 goals in the Premier League. He missed a third of the season. He probably could have scored 20 if he was fit and wasn't suspended. And I thought, great, Mitro can build on this. But at that moment, his head was turned, and the bid came. And you're right. I mean, they were doubling, tripling his wages.
Oh yeah, it's crazy money. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And I mean, listen, it's not like he wasn't getting paid well already at Fulham, but it's something for these footballers that they think about their families. It's life changing. I understand it. I don't agree with it, but it was strange because, okay, so the start of the U.S. tour, it's July. There are the rumors going around saying Mitrovic is the subject of a bid from Al Hilal. And apparently he said, I'll never play for Fulham again. And they had to convince him very strongly to come even on the plane to the U.S. tour. I was at 2 of the 3 games in U.S. tour. He didn't play at all. He was sitting on the bench, in just kind of practice clothes. And at that moment, we think, okay, he's probably leaving. He's going to leave any minute now. First game of the season against Everton, he's on the bench. And then he comes on and plays and actually plays quite well for a 20, 30-minute cameo. And Silva says he's back in the squad. He's part of our plans. And as the fans, we were kind of like a breath of relief. Like, okay, great. He's going to stay. Then Al Hilal came back with an offer which is much closer to what we wanted, which I think was closer to 45 million pounds, which that's a great deal for Mitro. He's 28.
Yeah.
He has injury problems. He has discipline problems. That is a really good bid financial wise. But as a fan, he means so much more to the team than just the money because he affects everything the way we play. He's such a good focal point. So I was sad to see it happen. I actually just saw, as we're recording the podcast, he scored his first goal in Saudi Arabia tonight, a header from a Ruben Neves cross. What can you say? But it's a weird situation because, we want to love him as fans. He's been through us through all the tough times. He scored tons of goals and tons of important goals. But you do feel like he's turned his back on us at a pretty crucial moment when he could have become an excellent Premier League player. He chose to turn his back on that. And I will never really forgive him for that, even if I understand some of the reasons.
But that's like, I mean, we are taking a little bit of a detour from the discussion, but like the Saudi league, I mean, money is at the end of the day, big thing. And also like, any league that's going to start making ripples in the footballing world right now needs money, and they need to pump in that star power and everything. I can understand it from that perspective, but taking away players, MLS is not able to do that, at least not yet. Poaching the players at the prime. Like right now, even when we are talking, even at Arsenal, like Gabriel, the defender, he's being approached by the Saudi League, and we don't know what the situation is going to be. This kind of like, from a footballing perspective, making it a little bit, unfair, or like, is it the way of the world? I mean, I understand it's the way of the world, but I don't know how to put that into words.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, we've been so used to the Premier League being the kind of major economic force in football, right? And we can offer wages that other clubs can't because of the TV deal. And I think in a way that seems more rational to football supporters because the Premier League is the best league in the world. So it makes sense that it can afford the best players. And I think what's so odd here is that the Saudi league, maybe that will change, but currently it's not a very good league. You would never go to the Saudi league for the football. I think that's very clear. Like they're going for the money, not for the competition, not for the history.
Yeah. No.
So that's just like, that's frustrating is that if they were going to any other league, which was competitive, you'd be like, okay, I get it. But we always want to believe that footballers want to compete for trophies, play for clubs, with proud histories, play in the best competitions against the best players. I watched the goal that Mitro scored today. The defending is laughable. It's not a high quality of football. And it's like, you would hope that their competitive nature would get the better of them. But again, it's a money game. And you mentioned that, and that's just the reality. So, and who knows? I mean, they're getting really good players, right? Conte, Benzema, Mitrovic, Neymar, that's just a couple I could be going for minutes. So maybe this will improve the league. because as you said, they're getting players at their prime mainly, whereas we've seen this in China and MLS a little bit. They're always like 30s at the end of the career. So who knows? I mean, let's wait a year and see. Maybe the Saudi League starts winning the Club World Cup. I doubt it, but who knows?
I mean, but getting back to Fulham though, you got like close to 50 million or 52 million as reported, uh, from the transfer. But and you got like a couple of players in. One of it is a striker, a forward, Raul Jimenez, and and then you also got what's his name, Adama Traore, uh, from the Wolves duo. I can see the plan, but you got 50 plus million on that deal. You could be spending on a much better player than a 32-year-old center forward.
No, I agree. And I like the idea of Jimenez, and I also love the idea of Traore. You know, maybe if it's 2019, like 4 seasons ago, these guys were at their peak
Yeah,
and
yeah.
having an amazing partnership. Now, I think there's a reason that they were both allowed to go from Wolves. It's because they didn't think they weren't in the plans of Wolves. And let's not forget, Wolves were in a relegation battle last season and Fulham finished 10th. So
Yeah.
it's not like these players were integral to a team who was worse than us.
Hmm.
So you're right. We have a lot of money now. We need to get a top striker. That's clear. It's so hard though. As you know, the market is difficult. I mean, you guys got Jesus the other season. Great signing. It's rare you can get such a high quality person who knows the Premier League and can score consistently. So I don't envy the job of the transfer. But you know, Jimenez started both games of the season so far against Everton, against Brentford. He hasn't scored. He looks okay, but the thing about Mitrovic, he can get crosses, he can head them in, he can drop back and play through balls, he can facilitate the play, and he just gets the attention of all the center backs so that for the wingers and other attacking midfielders, there's so much more space created because Mitrovic sucks them all into him. And Jimenez can't really replicate that. I'm not sure if it's fair to compare because they're totally different players, but that's what I'm worried about when I see Fulham play in the post-Mitro era, is just replacing his presence, which just extends all throughout the pitch. So we'll see.
I mean, for me, like I looked at the games. Like I said, the first game was, uh, it was brilliant from Leno. Leno's masterclass, I would
Amazing.
say. Like he just saved everything that was thrown at him. That was a great, great display of a goalkeeping talent. But then, like when you got to the Brentford game, that's where I saw so many holes in the team. And I mean, as I mentioned before, like I was listening to the 15-minute review in Cottage Talk, um, and watching the game, I felt the defensive partnership was not great. Diop and what's his name, Ream, both of them
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the great understanding of each other. But you did sign a center back, the guy from Ajax. I forgot his name. I should have written that down
Yeah,
somewhere.
Bassi.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he was he was rated, but he's still rated as a potential rather than a finished product. Like, so what is the idea behind your defensive line? Because like that mistake from Diop for the first goal was, I was shocked just looking at it. Like, what are you trying to do?
It was
uh,
terrible. Yeah.
it was terrible, and even the penalty decision was iffy, but still, like that shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't be running so deep into the defensive line. So, what do you feel about the defensive side of things, though?
Yeah, no, it's a great point about Diop. One of the worst individual errors you'll see maybe all season. Just I'm completely past it right to the Brentford player under no pressure. No
Yeah.
pressure at all. So that was poor. And Ream had a tough game because, you know, the penalty I think was incredibly soft, but you're right. You have to be smarter as a center back. You know the way a modern game is. You know how players go down easily. And also he got sent off because in the first half he went through the back of, I think it was Wisa or maybe it was Mbumbo, one of the Brentford strikers,
Mbumbo. Yeah, I saw Mbumbo.
in a
Yeah.
total unnecessarily
Yeah.
booking. There was no need for that. It was like a frustration tackle. So he needs to be smarter, Tim Ream. Bassi will come in and replace Ream for the Arsenal game. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it'll be probably Robinson on the left, Bassi
Hmm.
Diop center back, and then Tete right back. The fullbacks, I'm happy with. I think we're strong in those positions. Maybe need a little bit more depth, but
Hmm.
Robinson very excited about Tete. But the center backs is an issue because Diop has a mistake in him. Ream, I love Tim Ream as an American, but he's not young, and he does have these sometimes matches when it seems like this is maybe his last season, people think. And then Bassi, you're right, he's not the finished product, but in preseason he's been excellent. So that's actually one signing I have to say, hats off to Fulham. It was a smart thing to do because he'll play backup to Ream this season, in my opinion, but it's really a signing looking to the future. And that's what we want to see is kind of long-term planning. So I'm not sure, another thing I want to say about the defense is that, João Palhinha, who was injured early on, he came on as a sub against Brentford. I'm pretty sure he's going to start against Arsenal. That's crucial because his presence in center midfield just shields the center backs in a way which allows them, much less pressure. So I think that will be a benefit and make our defense look more solid.
I mean, I was getting there, like to the central midfield, because I felt, at least in the Brentford game, I felt the central midfield was overrun, like completely. Like there were nothing there. There was nothing screening. There was no like transitions happening. Um, I mean, as an Arsenal fan, I'm brought up to hate uh, United players, and so I don't like Pereira. I don't like Pereira, and so I see everything negative that whatever he does. Do you feel like when we talk about like from the squad perspective or from the first team perspective, especially, do you feel more signing coming in? Do you feel that something else can happen that could make this team work a little bit better?
I think so. I think what we need is definitely a striker, as we talked about. I think we also need some more support in the wings because, our current options are like Willian, who, had a terrible time at Arsenal, but was great last season.
Oh yeah.
But I am worried that was the best season we'll see from him at Fulham, and he might just decline because he's not getting any younger, and he hasn't played well early on this season. Harry Wilson, who he's one of those players who's like, is he a Premier League player or is he just a really good championship player? He's kind of in the middle. Bobby Decordova-Reid, who actually you scored the winner against Everton, always seems to come up in crucial times for us, but I don't think he's a consistent starter.
But
And then
that's
it's
going to be where Traore is going to come
Traore.
in.
But again, Traore, like, amazing pace, great on the counterattack. I think he's always struggled to get goals and assists, and that's concerning. At the end product isn't there. So I think we need a winger. And then center midfield, you're right. Like we have Pereira, we have Palhinha, we have Lukic, Harrison Reed, Tom Kearney. I would like another player to play alongside Palhinha and kind of the two more defensive players. Because Lukic and Reed, they started against Brentford. And as you mentioned, the midfield looks very overrun. And I think they're decent players, but this is a Premier League and we need really strong options in every position. So I think there will be more signings. It's only a week to go, right? So we're kind of running out of time. But Fulham, as Fulham fans will tell you, we like to leave it late. So I think deadline day will be busy.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing, at least in whatever news I'm following, I'm not seeing a lot of like rumors linking players. Do you see any rumors of players being linked?
Yeah, no, it's funny. I mean, I think the strikers, it's like Balogun, but I think he's probably going to go to Monaco or another. I don't think he's going to come to us. It's been pretty quiet. You're right. Like Moise Kean was another player who was rumored, and then Marco Silva came out in this press conference today and said directly, "We're not signing him," which I feel like never happens. So he was very direct. It's a very good point. It's kind of been quiet during the moment when you expect it to be very busy, but sometimes things happen like this. Like Traore, I didn't know about that until like the day it happened, right? Jimenez pretty similar. So I think what we've seen, maybe we move quickly and there's not that much kind of long, drawn out transfer sagas. Who knows?
But like, if I have to put you on a spot and ask you, like, who are the players that you would like to be in your team? As in, like, not Messi from from the States or something, something that this transfer could happen, and that is what I want. Some player. Do you have anyone in mind?
That's actually a really good question. I mean, I would love like a young striker, like a Balogun. Not sure if that's realistic. I don't know, someone like a Che Adams, maybe from Southampton. I always rated him as an exciting striker. And Evan Ferguson, I think I would love him on loan from Brighton because he's someone who seems like, I think João Pedro's their striker now. He's on the bench. Yeah, just some more kind of talent. Because right now we have Jimenez, Vinicius, and Rodrigo Muniz, who's probably gonna be loaned out, and it's like there's not
very thin.
It's thin, and Micho scored 14 goals for us, and we need to replace those somehow. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Shifting the talk to Arsenal a little bit, I would want to know your thoughts on what Arsenal was like last season. Yes, we finished second, and all those things. Arsenal fans are like talking all these things, and I know I'm one of those deluded fans who have been going like, wow, we are great and all those things. But like, it's good to hear from others about what what it looks like from outside for Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, the summer transfer business was, I think, exceptional, right? Declan Rice, Timber,
Yeah.
Havertz. I'm probably missing a couple, but I mean, you went out there and signed with ambition, which is
Hmm.
the number one way to try to combat City, because City have X amount of players in each position, so deep, so
Hmm.
strong, and if anyone needs to compete, you need to match up with that. So I think the fact that you guys got Declan Rice over teams like Man City was a statement of intent. I haven't been super impressed with the first two games this season, though. Honestly, I mean, Forest at home, it got kind of nervy at the end, and
Yeah.
then the Palace game, yeah, there was the sending off, but you know, it wasn't super strong in the first half.
Hmm.
So, I mean, is Nketiah going to start instead of is Jesus? He's still injured, right?
Yeah,
So,
Jesus just
so
got back to training. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's obviously a big downgrade. I think some people like Nketiah, but he's not. He's obviously not as good as Jesus.
Hmm.
But I think that, yeah, I mean, I expect them to challenge this year. I don't know if they have enough to beat City, just because I don't think any side is as strong as City. But I think Arteta's building something very impressive, and the signings to me showed that intent. So I predict you guys will finish second this year.
But talking about the table and City and everyone else, they're like, I don't know how you see the drop from Manchester United and Chelsea and the teams around, in the Premier League. This season, at least from the start, there's only like three teams left that has not been, that's still winning after just two games. That's a very, very different season than a lot of other ones. Like we usually have 4 or 5 teams at this point, and like it'll go on till like 5 games where you will clearly see, okay, this team is now gathering pace and stuff. But this time it seems like everyone's dropping points, everyone's not having a great game. Is this like, a late reaction to last year's World Cup, like, where players didn't have the rest and stuff? Or is this just like, is this how Premier League is going to be in future, where it's going to be very cagey, very competitive and stuff?
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. I like the World Cup theory. Is that, yeah, it's a knock-on effect. Just so many matches being played in such a short span of time, and there not really being a long break. I think that's true. I also just think that a lot of the top sides, apart from you and City, I just don't rate them. Like Chelsea are a disaster.
Hmm.
Liverpool are going through a lot of transition with all the departures they had this season. Um, United have looked really poor early on.
That
Nowhere
makes
near.
me so happy. Like I know, I know it's just a Arsenal fan thing, but like United being a shambles is like so happy.
No, I can imagine it. It's a good feeling, I bet. And there just seems to be a lot of like flux, and Arsenal has been one team along with City, which seems to have been stable and adding. So yeah, I think for me, it's like, can anyone touch City? That's just a real question. Is because you guys came the closest in recent years, but I mean, with Holland, he's going to score 30 plus goals again. Yeah, they lost Gundogan, sure, but they signed Kovacic. They just seem to be a complete juggernaut. And that's my question: is that, can any side do it? I mean, what do you think? Do you think you're better positioned this year than last year?
Um, I think we are better positioned this year than last year, because last year some of our problems came from squad depth. We didn't have, like, when, for example, when Saliba was injured, our cover was Rob Holding. I mean, still it's still the same, but but when Partey got injured, our cover was, Mohamed El Nini, until we signed Jorginho to come in. And still, like, that's not a signing that is going to step up, or that's not going to be a player who's going to push Partey to perform, something like that. So now we have increased the squad depth, but will that be enough to bridge the gap? I don't think so. I still feel that City as a unit is like, they know how to do this. Like when it comes to February till the end of the season, you can never do what City does. No team can do what City does. They just is unbeatable during that period. Every year we have seen that
Yeah.
again and again. When the time comes, their team knows how to get points, how to be that unbeatable team. That mentality and that whole thing is something that cannot be replicated. That needs a lot more than just like players, squad depth and stuff. That needs something special. Liverpool was able to do it once, and that's it. But about the other teams though, right? Like I mean, obviously with Fulham, it's not a last time you finished 10th, so it's not a talk that as a fan you shouldn't be worried about it this season. Like relegation is a talk that you shouldn't be worried about this season. But are you worried about it at this
Yeah.
point?
I would say no, just because off the bat, there are some truly awful teams in the league this year. Everton being one of them. I think Luton and Sheffield United, also teams who I think will really struggle. So I'm confident there are at least 3 teams which are worse than us. It would take a total collapse, in my opinion, for us to be sucked down into that position. But I'm concerned about being, 14th, 15th, 13th, that kind of lower middle half era.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've shown that we're better than that last season, and you don't ever want to regress
Yeah.
as a club. But I think, for all the reasons I mentioned earlier in the show, we went into that. We ended last season thinking, let's improve ourselves even more after this great season. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we've actually changed our expectations to be like, we know actually we'll probably finish lower than we did last season. So I'm predicting like 11th, 12th, maybe. Um, who knows? Who knows what happens in the last week of the window? That will determine a lot of, how the fans view the rest of the season. But, again, it's such a competitive league. Teams are strengthening all the time, and we've undoubtedly, gone weaker. So,
But if you
I,
finish like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but if
uh,
you finish 11th or 12th, do you think you can hold Marco Silva still?
yeah, well, that's the
Because
question.
I mean, from what I know of him, he is a coach who wants to go for it, who wants to be, that person who takes the team forward. And if it's not his fault, obviously, then would you be able to hold him to this job?
It's a big concern because, I'll tell you what, he got approached by a Saudi team this summer as well, and they offered him ridiculous money like they do to everyone, and he actually turned them down, which we are delighted about as Fulham fans. But I think it speaks to what you're saying, is that he's someone who's incredibly ambitious, and he know that going to Saudi would probably hurt his chances of getting a top 4, top 6 club in England.
Yeah.
And I can totally see it happening where he spends one more season with us, and then there's a vacancy at a Tottenham or a Chelsea or a Liverpool, or I don't know. I mean, one of those teams who's not a top club, but one of the chasing pack.
Hmm.
And I think he might go. It really just depends on what the openings are, but it is something to be concerned about, that this might be the last season we have him.
Mm. Okay, getting back to this game though, right? Like, I mean, you mentioned that there's going to be a lot of changes in the starting lineup. So, if I have to ask you to, name your starting lineup for this Arsenal game, what would that be?
Yeah, good question. Of course, we got Leno in goal,
Yeah.
Arsenal legend. He's been great. You mentioned the Everton game, and even all throughout last season,
Hmm.
one of our best performers. And many people even said he was player of the season. So, just as a Fulham fan, thank you for letting us have him. Left back Robinson, center backs Bassi coming in for Ream, who got the red card, and then Diop alongside him, and then Kenny Tete. I think it'll probably be João Palhinha and Harrison Reed, with Pereira playing attacking midfield. So that's a center mids. And then I think we're gonna have Jimenez up top as a central striker, Willian playing on the left, and then on the right, it could really be a coin flip between Harry Wilson or Bobby Decadova Reed, but I'm gonna say Harry Wilson.
Mm. But like you mentioned about the midfield that Paulinho could come in, but he's coming in after the injury, right? Like so, and he played what 20 minutes of last game. Do you think you're gonna start him right away, or like will he be slowly integrated into the team?
I think because he's so critical to the way we play, I think Silva's inclined to start him. And I mean, it was a shoulder injury, which is a little bit of a weird one for a
Hmm.
footballer. So I think that to me makes it more likely he'll start than if it was like a hamstring or like a foot injury.
Yeah.
I think he's probably been running, and his fitness isn't as bad as it would have been if he couldn't, work out. But yeah, I'm confident he'll start.
Mhm. With the Arsenal, I think for us the biggest question would be like whether Gabriel Magalhaes, the defender, would start because the back four has been where the thing is, like, and Tomiyasu getting a red, not a straight red, so he could potentially be back. But we also had like Zinchenko play a couple of minutes last game, so I think like if Zinchenko is fit enough, then I think Zinchenko would start for Arsenal. And personally, I would want Gabriel to start so that we get the last season's back four of Zinchenko, Gabriel, Saliba, and White. But I'm not sure. Like, I still think that our Arteta is trying to experiment, fitting all three, Partey, Rice, and Havertz in the same pitch. So I think Partey would still be the right back, and midfield would be Rice, Havertz, and Odegaard, and then uh, Martinelli has not been having great games, but I think this game he might still play so that like going into the international break, we get some idea about it. I guess it's going to be exactly the same team except Tomiyasu being replaced by Zinchenko from the last game. But I want to ask you this question, right? Like, if I have to ask you to right now say, this is the place where Fulham could actually win this game, what would be that area of the pitch? Like, this area of the pitch, if we did better, we could, or if we do this thing better in the game, we would be able to win this thing. So, what would that be?
Yeah,
Our
I
player.
think this team is so dependent on Palhinha in many ways. So I think it has to be the center of the park.
Mm-hmm.
Like if Palhinha can just be the beast, which he can be, and break up action with your creative players in center midfield, put in some tackles, press them and get us in the counter. I think that's the area. The also other area I'd say is Pereira. His set piece delivery is fantastic. So I think if we get corners, free kicks, situations where he can put a ball in the box, that's an area we can excel at because he's just consistently so good at placing the ball right between the keeper and the back line when it's very difficult to deal with. So yeah, it's a center of the park is massive for us with Palhinha and Pereira in there.
Hmm. For us too, I feel that the same reason. Like if Rice was great last game, like totally justified whatever money we paid for him last game. So if we could maintain that impact in the midfield and if we could free up our forwards a little bit more, I think Arsenal would be able to play a better game this time around. But okay, so last couple of questions though is like like you mentioned, there's a week left in the transfers, and we've talked about it a lot and stuff. But uh, like do you see any transfers happening in the league, like, across the league that's going to be like, okay, this is a great news coming up for the league? Like, something like Mbappe coming in, like random stuff.
I think that it kind of back to the Fulham one you asked me, that was Callum Hudson-Odoi
Mhm.
has been linked with Fulham, the Chelsea player. That
Yeah.
could be a good thing for us to get him. I think Mbappe looks like he's staying at PSG. I'd
Mhm.
love to see him in England. Would really do. And Harry Kane left, right? So
Yeah.
that's a bizarre one. I actually kind of want to see Kane play at another Premier League club where he could win a trophy. That would have been exciting for me to see.
I mean, I'm happy, so.
Yeah, exactly. You guys, he's gone. But imagine him at Arsenal. That would be funny. This is, I don't think this will happen, but I would love to see like Luka Modric, who's not playing as much as Real Madrid, come over and play for like a Premier League team to
Mhm.
finish his career. Because I think he's an excellent player. But yeah, it's weird. It seems like a lot of the big transfers this summer have come away from the Premier League. Like
Yeah.
Bellingham going to Real Madrid is one that
Yeah.
comes to mind, where I doubt it feels like he should have come to an English team. Um,
I mean, Liverpool were trying to get him till the
yeah.
last moment, but they were not able to. I feel like Premier League didn't get any big transfers this season. Like this window, we didn't get any big transfers. Like last year, it was all about like Haaland, and then that move did happen. So this season, this transfer window, I didn't see anything big happening. That's why I put that question up to you. So yeah, I mean, well, let's see. It's almost here, so we'll know in a week's time. Um, Max, it's been great, but I have to ask you this question. I know, like, prediction wise, there will be two kind of predictions, one from the head and one from the heart. So, what are your predictions for this game from the head and from the heart?
I mean, head tells me that we're gonna lose 2-0. But I think from the heart, I'd say we can get a 1-1 draw.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a great one, actually. I mean, that's good. It's been great having you, in this episode. You've shared a lot of information, and it's a great conversation always. So thank you so much for coming in. It's amazing. So for all the listeners, please do go and check out Cottage Talk. They are doing great work, and also follow Max. We'll add links to the descriptions in Twitter. Follow Max, and it's been great. Thank you, Max, for coming in, and hopefully you guys sign some striker. I mean, some. I really want a better Premier League. I really want a competitive games. I really want to see like fun, fun games. And Marco Silva for me deserves that kind of a team that he can implement his ideas. And you guys deserve to be there in the 10th and about. So I hope something happens, some miracle happens, and you get some good players soon. Thanks, man. Thanks, Max, for coming in.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's been great to be on the show. I always enjoyed coming on your podcast, and good luck to Arsenal. I think most people would say if it was Arsenal or City, they'll root for Arsenal in the title race. So I feel the same way.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.